Wuthering Waves has had a fair few changes within the time since release, with most of those changes being quality of life and bug fixes. However, even though the devs have done a great job getting the game to its current state, there are still a few areas I think could use some changes. Now, I want to talk about some of the things that I'm hoping to see come to the game to hopefully make the gaming experience better for everyone. The first one I have mentioned in a previous video. The echo tracking system is great, but you can currently only track one echo at a time, and if you need multiple different echoes, you can waste a lot of time by teleporting around the map because your tracking target is far away, while a different echo you might also want to farm is within walking distance. With the current system, if you don't remember that other echo is close by, you'll need to come back to the same area again to farm it later. I would like to see the tracking system allow for tracking multiple targets at once, so you can farm echoes more efficiently with less loading screens. I know there are a few different tools out there for helping with echo tracking, but it'd be really nice if the game would do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. For the next one, most of the dialogue in the game can be skipped, which a lot of people liked about Wuthering Waves coming from games like Star Rail and Genshin. However, there's currently a few areas of the game that have repeatable content, but the dialogue cannot be skipped. Those are the Simulation Training NPC, which is where you can spend wave plates for resonator experience, weapon experience, and shell credits. And also currently a lot of the dialogue in the Illusive realm cannot be skipped, even though you used to be able to skip it. These aren't really a big deal as you can spam through the dialogue pretty quickly. However, I would like to see the skip button come back for those two areas of the game. Now, the next one is something I consider to be a must, and that is two-factor authentication. Whenever you have a game that you can spend not only thousands of hours in, but also hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of dollars, they need to give us a way to protect our account. And two-factor authentication is the best way to do that. It can be seen as intrusive and an extra step when you need to log in for the first time, but it's a much better option than having your account stolen. So Kuro, please add two-factor authentication. It is very important. The next one I want to talk about, the holograms are my favorite content in the game by far, because beating a boss that has enough damage to one-shot your character is, in my opinion, a good challenge. I can definitely understand why people don't like it as much, as it can be very punishing, but for someone like me, I really enjoy that sort of gameplay. However, I do hope this is just Inferno Rider, but that hologram feels like Kuro wants to move away from 1 to 2 minute long skill-based fights to a more HP sponge boss with MMO don't stand in the stupid attacks, and attacks that don't do enough damage to even two-shot a DPS character with no defense buffs. Now, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't mind MMO-like mechanics in a co-op fight, but the holograms originally felt like they were meant to be the skill-based fights for Wuthering Waves, but Inferno Rider doesn't really feel like that. And with Inferno Rider not really doing much damage at all, the fight doesn't really feel like it offers the same challenge as the other holograms do. Now, if you want to point out that Crownless doesn't do a lot of damage either, I am well aware of that, but his attacks are aggressive enough to make up for the lack of damage. So what I'm ultimately getting at is I hope they go back to the original design of the holograms, making them skill-based fights that take about 1 to 2.5 minutes for the average player's team. I think fights like that are a good challenge for the game. My next one is pretty simple, and that is full control customization. I definitely get that Kuro doesn't want us fucking with certain controls, but for an example, while climbing, my brain thinks the B button is the button I should press to drop off the wall, but the actual button to do so is set to X. The biggest problem with this is the selection to change the button is locked, even though while on the wall, the B button doesn't do anything. To be completely fair to Kuro, this might actually be set to X by mistake, because the button symbols on the UI have the icon for dropping off the wall set to the B button. However, my point is, I don't expect the developers to find the perfect default control layout for every single player. So letting us customize the controls to something that we're more comfortable with would go a long way to fixing any muscle memory conflicts a player like myself has. Next, I'm always a fan of streamlining things that are simple to do but take a bit of time to complete. So the next thing I would like to see come to Wuthering Waves is weapon and echo presets for characters. Another name for these would be loadouts. Almost every character in the game wants slightly different stats, weapons, and echoes. However, especially when you're building up your first 3 teams, you'll likely want to share a lot of the resources you have between your characters until you have a weapon or full echo set for each of them. So instead of manually changing everything over, adding presets for each character would help players not only keep track of what echoes they want on each character, but also optimize the time spent organizing your characters before a fight. This preset or loadout selection screen could also double as a full build screen that shows the raw stats of your build without buffs, while also showing what weapon and echoes are equipped, the set that you're using, and what sequences are enabled, making it useful for people who want to screenshot their stats and share them on social media. Next, this is something I've seen a fair few people ask for, and I would like to see this too, and that is a training dummy or training area. Some teams in the game have some pretty complex rotations, and in order to learn them, a training dummy that can't be staggered or attacked back would help a lot of players get used to a rotation before taking your team into a fight. There are multiple reasons I would like to see a training area over a training dummy, and the main reason for that is it could have some extra settings the player could have access to, such as a DPS meter that calculates the average damage per second of your team. You could set the target to be able to attack back to test your dodging, and you could also spawn in multiple enemies to test AoE rotations as well. Don't get me wrong, the current training room is great, but you can't bring your own team in. The enemies get staggered a lot as they're just normal mobs, so a lot of your attacks can miss, and since you can't bring your own characters, you can't use it to test damage very well. This next idea is something I wanted to see come to Genshin but never did, and that is event weapons that cater to a specific character that doesn't have a signature weapon. For example, Kaching's splash art has her wielding a weapon that I'm pretty sure never got released into the game, and in my opinion, it would have made for a great event weapon. So my idea is any character in the game like Yang Yang, Chisha, Sanhua, Dan Jin, they can eventually get a free 4-star weapon through an event that matches their design and is considered to be their signature weapon. Now, these weapons don't have to be BIS as they are free, and I'm sure Kuro still wants to try and sell us the idea of pulling for 5-star weapons, but it could have an extra passive that only works on that character, making it a good choice for them. In my opinion, I would much rather event weapons were like this instead of getting a pink cat sword that doesn't really match anyone's design. The alternative to this idea, if Kuro doesn't want to make 4-star weapons cater to old characters, they could just make some weapon skins that suit that character's design. This next one is something that doesn't really affect me too much because none of my friends actually play Wuthering Waves, but I would like to see player level equalization when playing with friends. For an example, if my max level is 90, but my friend's max level is 40, if I join their world, I would like to see my stats and gear come down as if my character was also level 40 and didn't have high level echoes or weapons. However, I would also like this to work in reverse. If my low level friend joins my world, which currently they can't, but for the sake of the argument, I would like to see all their stats and levels be brought up similar to mine, so no matter how we choose to co-op, we can both enjoy the game together without feeling like the high level friend is making the content too easy, or the low level friend is getting one shot by the enemies because they're all above level 80. The only reason I want to see something like this is if one of my mates did start playing the game and wanted to co-op, I wouldn't want to take the experience of the game away from them by killing everything in their world in one hit. If it makes it easier to think about my argument, in Final Fantasy XIV, when you do a low level dungeon as a high level, your level and stats are all brought down to match a few levels above the level of the dungeon. That's sort of similar to what I'm talking about, allowing friends of different soul levels to play together without the enemies being too easy or too hard. Now, one addition I loved in the recent update was being able to claim some free echoes and materials in the Illusive realm, but claiming them 12 times a week is pretty time consuming, especially when you've already finished the Illusive realm and don't need to farm it anymore. So I would like to see two things happen. A faster way to claim rewards, with an example being you can claim multiple times the further you push into Illusive realm. The first boss you can claim once, the second boss you can claim twice, the third boss you can claim 3 times, and the final boss you can claim 6. Right now, you can just speedrun the first boss and claim the rewards pretty fast, but that really isn't the idea of the Illusive realm. So speeding up how fast you can claim all the rewards by pushing further into Illusive realm would be a good idea in my opinion. The other thing I would like to see changed is maybe adding 10 tuners to each claim, as there's not a lot of ways to get tuners at the moment, and that would be 120 tuners a week for free, which is pretty fair in my opinion. However, other than two-factor authentication, none of these things that I brought up are musts for the game. And when you look at Wuthering Waves now compared to launch, Kuro has been knocking it out of the park with positive changes to the game. It doesn't feel like that long ago when people were saying Kuro had to give a free 5-star selector because of how bad the game was at launch. And to be fair, I didn't know whether I agreed with that opinion at the time, but I certainly don't agree with it now. There's been so many improvements and additions that the game feels like it's in a really good spot, with a lot more to look forward to as we head into Renacida and 2.0. Funnily enough, the reason I thought about making this video was originally I was going to make a video as a returning player to Genshin Impact, which I've been playing for the last week to get a good perspective. I did have fun at the start getting through the Archon quest for Natlin, but it didn't take me long before I started to get frustrated with all the little issues that have been in the game since day one and still haven't been addressed. So when it came around to making the video, I ultimately decided against doing it because even though I did have a few positives and things I was neutral on, the negatives would likely make people view it as just a drama video, which is never my intention. Having said that, if you would be interested in that video, you can let me know down in the comments and I might decide to make it anyway. I have all the gameplay sitting there, I would just need to make the video. One thing that I'll state though, I'm not a Genshin hater. I really hope the game improves, but the biggest problem is I almost guarantee the returning player survey I filled out is going to end up in the same dumpster as all the other surveys. I'd love to be wrong about that, but I'm not going to hold my breath. However, as always, I hope you were able to enjoy the video, and if you did, you can leave a like or a comment. If you would like to see more content in future, you can subscribe to the channel. But that will do it from me, so I hope to see you in the next video, and I'll catch you later.